Hey everyone, hello. Welcome to the 7 Minute Workshop, during which we chat with experts to break down complicated or timely topics that affect your business. And we do it in just 7 minutes. Folks, that's the same amount of time it takes me to make a pour over coffee. And gosh, it's delicious. All right, after a month spent on accounting, we're moving on to a new theme for our 7 Minute Workshop. And it's something I know a lot of you have been thinking about: managing a hybrid workforce. Okay, and now diving into that important topic, today we're going to be joined by NetSuite experts Hanif Ismail, Vice President of Strategy and Product Management for NetSuite HCM, and Marc Holliday, who is our Senior Product Marketing Manager. That's right, we've got two guests for the price of one. Now, for today's topic, we'll be covering the things to consider in returning to the office, suggestions for how to go about it, your policies, safety, how to engage your employees who are returning for the first time in over a year, and more, if that is the case for you. Of course, every business has to decide these things for themselves. I need to point out Hanif and Marc are not legal experts, and what we're going to be relegating our conversation to are the things that businesses are discussing right now. Also, a quick reminder, if you have any questions throughout today's discussion, you can ask them in the comments, and we'll get to them at the end of the conversation. And don't forget, tell us where you're tuning in from. We know you're signing in from all parts of the world, and we want to know where that's from. We want to give you a shout out right back. And also, when you do that, tell us how your company is returning to the office. Have they done it already, partially, in full? Did they never leave? Leave a note in the comments. Okay, now please join me in welcoming Hanif Ismail and Marc Holliday. Hi, Marc. Hi, Hanif. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Fritz. Great to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
Hey, Fritz. Good to be here with you.
All right, we're going to just dive right in because this is a meaty topic and we've only got 7 minutes. Marc, we've been talking about the return to the office for a while, but it feels maybe a little more real, a little more imminent for a lot of people right now. From a business perspective, what options are companies considering?
Yeah, first of all, Fritz, I think that there were some industries that did not have the option to dispatch their workforce to remote locations. For those that did, there's really three models that are emerging that companies are considering. The first one is bringing everybody who was in the office prior to the pandemic back into the office full time. Another option is to allow the workforce to remain fully remote. And then the last one, which is seeming to be the leading type of model, is a hybrid model that you just spoke of. And that's where some of the time employees are in the office and some of the times they are working from a remote location. The one thing that's kind of interesting for all three of these models is that you really need to start listening and talking to your employees, whether it's in one-on-one conversations or through more formal methods such as surveying them. It's really important for companies, whichever model they decide. Every business is different, but to take the pulse of your employees, not just one time, but periodically throughout this transition back into the office.
Yep, it's a good point. We're all in this together, and it's a delicate balance. Hanif, how should businesses plan the act of bringing people back into the office?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. There's a lot of discussion, as you can imagine, around this topic right now, both in our customer base as well as generally the industry. This is really going to depend on each business situation and will really differ depending on the industry that you're in. So whether you're in retail, restaurants, or high tech as an example. But what we're really hearing from our customer bases is that most are opting towards some form of a phased kind of a return strategy, as opposed to like a big bang strategy, open the doors and everybody comes in. Again, the phase strategy gives you a lot more control over safety. One method of prioritizing who do you put into the phases, what we're hearing about from that perspective is companies are looking at it, some of them, with a lens of what roles stand to benefit the most from being physically back in the office. So if you look at the extremes, like a software engineer as an example, can probably work remotely very effectively for a while. But on the other extreme, a restaurant server, needs to be in the office, needs to be, in the restaurant, right? Serving people. So very different models in that case. And then a lot of companies are now starting to send out surveys to employees, to taking a pulse from the employees, getting their point of view and preferences in terms of returning to work and so forth. And you can take that information and then include that as part of your strategy as well. But there's no really one size fits all. It's really going to vary and differ based on company situation.
For sure. And we're hearing all of those things being talked about. Speaking of which, what are some of the ways that businesses are talking about ensuring a safe return to the office?
Yeah, I think the first thing to keep in mind is, following your local and federal government guidelines. If you haven't already educated yourself on those, that would be the first thing to consider is understanding what's going on locally and then nationally in your part of the world, because every part of the world is different. And then some of the more tactical things that we see people are considering is the simple use of signs. However you determine what your policies are, it's important that you have reminder signs up throughout the workplace, even starting on the very front door, so people understand what's expected of them when they do return to the workplace.
Okay, we've got a few people giving us some shout outs here. As always, I will do my best with names. Halima says hi, so hi back. Suhel from England, Mustafa from Egypt, that's in the region I'm in. Vanessa, good evening from Sweden. I think this says God Kaval. I don't know if I pronounce that right. Vanessa, correct my pronunciation, please. Put it in the comments. Make sure I get it right. Lawrence says hi. Mabuhay. Again, Lawrence, correct my pronunciation. Lawrence is from the Philippines. Sarvanthi from India. Lalita from Thailand. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in and giving us a shout out. Let's continue and talk about some of the policies that businesses are maybe amending or considering implementing in the transition period back into the office. I'll turn it to Hanif.
Sure. From what we're hearing, the policies are going to be drastically different. And by the way, it's great to hear a global audience on this. So this is obviously very globally sensitive. It's going to be different based on the regulations in country, in state, and so forth. So please be aware of that. But in general terms, the kinds of things that we're hearing about are, flexible work policies. As Marc mentioned earlier, if companies are looking at some sort of a hybrid kind of a strategy, then in that context, some people are going to work from home for a few days and then the rest of the days from the office or something like that. Your policies maybe need to be revisited, right? Because you'd want to account for something like that in the flexible work policies. You want to also address things like, can all roles work from home? Or do you want to limit them to certain types of positions or types of roles kind of thing? So that's one of the things that you want to obviously keep in mind. Benefits policies, you may want to revisit that as well. Think about whether are you covering your employees for EAP, which is employee assistance programs? Is that covered? So providing short-term counseling for your employees, especially during these circumstances. Some are also considering to add in childcare capabilities within their benefits portfolio as well. If you don't do that and your employees you're seeing a demand from your employees, that might be something else that you want to consider. Compensation policies, if some people want to, if they're working remotely consistently now and they will work remotely going forward, you may want to think about, well, what's the implications of that from a compensation perspective? Will they carry on, let's say they move from a high cost to a low cost? Do they still stay on the same compensation plan? Do you change the compensation plans to reflect the lower cost? So there are pros and cons to a lot of this, but it's something that companies need to kind of think through. The last one I'll mention is probably time off policies as an example. Somebody wants to take time off to go take a vaccine. Do you pay them or not? You need to be clear about those things because there are also government incentives and so forth in place. So you should check your government rules, your regulations around that, and what they can do to support you. What if an employee refuses to come to work for fear of infection, as an example? How do you handle this kind of situation? You want to be able to address that in your time off policies. And again, the guidance there would be is look at your local and state regulations, and that'll give you some advice there. But the list goes on. There's also travel and expense and so forth that people would want to rethink and kind of take a look at again.
Yep, that's a lot of great stuff, a lot of things to think about. And one last thing I want to ask about is employee wellness, and that obviously became a big priority for businesses during the pandemic. And how do businesses need to shift the way they're thinking about wellness and returning into the office?
Yeah, I think one of the things that for those of us who are working remotely, one thing we've seen is there seems to be just a general sense of disconnect from the company. I mean, you're not coming into the office every day and seeing your managers and your colleagues. So one of the things you should consider is just to reestablish your mission so that your employees can find that connection to their work and to the overall company mission. So it doesn't hurt to remind and repeat what the company's purpose is and what the vision is. And as Hanif mentioned, what we're seeing is a lot of companies are revisiting their benefits packages. If you can't look at your benefits package today and point to wellness offerings, you should really consider offering those to your employees. Other innovative ways on the topic of wellness include a little bit more flexibility in working non-traditional hours. The days of the 9 to 5 are probably gone. So if somebody needs extra time during the day to take care of something and they do some work in the evenings or even on the weekends, have some flexibility there. Other things we've seen are giving wellness days as a day off just to recharge. But the benefit to the employee is not having those take from their PTO balances. So it's just a day just to reset and recharge. And some companies have even taken it a step further and had collective shutdowns where they will just shut down on a Friday just to give the whole company kind of a break. Other companies are shutting down for entire weeks just to give everybody that sense of wellness and recharging. So when they do return to work, they feel recharged and they feel valued that the company is understanding the situation that they're in.
Okay, well, we are going to open this up to some questions from the audience. And if you're tuning in, if you still have questions, keep commenting, keep shouting out. We're going to do our best to say hello and answer as many questions throughout the remainder of our time. And we do have some more shout outs. Vikas is from Earth, which is probably a good location to be right now. Thank you for that sense of humor as well. Raymond is saying hi from Dublin, Ireland. We have Dana from Northern California, and Vanessa has chimed back in to say that the pronunciation of what she wanted to say was good gavel. And I guess I was close with that. And I may still be a hair off, but I don't know. Okay. Our first question is, what are some of the tools that can help businesses track employee data like engagement, how safe employees feel, whether they feel their employees are taking care of them, etc.? Hanif, I'll give you this one.
Sure, I'll take that one. Yeah, I think the first thing that customers can do or companies can do is primary, which is the foundation. Ensure that you have an up-to-date, basic, consolidated record of all your employees. You have an accurate roster of your employees, contact information, location, reporting relationships, the basic stuff. Make sure that's together and you've got that in one repository, because what we find with a lot of customers is that information's in multiple sources. And when it's in multiple sources, it's usually not accurate and it's difficult to access and so forth. So if you have it all in one place, you have the information you need to start doing some analysis against it and then leverage that data to help you build a strategy. So that's important, the other aspect, another tool that goes with that theme is something like self-service capabilities, whether it's employee self-service or it's manager-related self-service. Deploying those kinds of tools as well, that helps. Managing time off is another clear aspect of this, which is, what is my available time off? An employee wants to know, how much time have I taken, right? And then from a company's perspective, what's the financial liability of that unused time? So having information like that up to date and having accurate information around that really helps in situations like this. I think on the engagement front, I would look at probably one key one is performance management. If you have not deployed performance management solutions, this is a great time to consider it. There was a time when you could, a lot of managers used to say, and I have these conversations, manager used to say, oh, I'll have this conversation. I have a conversation with these individuals in the hallway, while we're passing by, and I get a pulse of where they are and so forth. I don't think that's enough from a performance perspective, but having said that, given the remote situation today, this is a great time to be able to put this in place. Lots has changed in the industry. We've got a lot more people working remotely now. Having mutual understanding, I would say, and assessment of those goals is highly important, especially given the increase in remote workforce, and specifically to manage productivity. I'd say one more is recognizing employees. There are many employees that are going above and beyond right now, especially at these times. You want to recognize them. So having tools like either kudos, or we call it kudos and sweet people, or bless you, or recognition tool, having those in place can really be helpful. It's not always about giving somebody a monetary reward. It's just recognizing them, giving them a badge, or recognizing them in front of an audience. It makes a huge difference. And actually, one more thought just came to mind, which is surveys. And, deploying surveys on a regular basis, getting a pulse on employees, getting to understand, are they feeling comfortable with the transitioning back to work right now? How's the company handling COVID situation? Getting a pulse on that can be extremely beneficial as well. So many tools are available for that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Marc, how long do you think a phased approach might take in returning to the office?
Well, the world has been reacting to this disruption in the workplace for the past 18 months, and that reaction is still going on. And nobody really has a crystal ball. It's going to be different for every company. I think the real answer is probably not very quickly, but it probably is going to be the result of when you ask your employees how they're feeling about the return and the new models of work that they're working under. So the importance of keeping in touch with them, understanding collectively and individually how they're feeling about this transition back in the workplace. I think then companies will understand if they've met that milestone of moving into this new workforce model.
Got it. We got a few more things. Vanessa, again, chiming in saying I got it just right. Thank goodness. Also, some of the things Vanessa's company is doing, policies, local and international, with flexible alternatives, assuring the well-being, physical and mental, for the employee. Thank you, Vanessa, for sharing that. Trish says hi from Canada. Danae, I think is how you pronounce it, is asking, are there any plans to return to work for Oracle NetSuite in the US? We can't talk about the Oracle policies here on this. So I'm sorry, we'll have to skip that side question, but thank you for asking. Kalpana, hello from Poland. Julio, hello everyone watching from Amzer Technologies in Guatemala. Jonathan, hello from Montreal, Canada. Ganesh from India. Fahad, hello from India as well. And so we have another question. I had a quick aside, Hanif. You had talked earlier about engineers who may not need to go back in right away, and servers in a restaurant. But are there other any other trends that we're seeing? Is it are younger people wanting to go in, or older people wanting to go in, or is it salespeople that we need back in to feed off energy, or anything around that you can relay to us?
Yeah, like I said earlier, it's going to differ from one company to another, given the situation, the key drivers. I know some companies are also thinking about things like experience level. If people aren't as experienced, you might want them back into the office, and they're bringing them in. And that could be sales reps that might not be as experienced, as an example, or other kinds of situations. But there are some themes like that are coming up. A lot of it, again, is just based on the industries.
Got it. Okay. I think this might be the final question we have time for. With the labor shortage, how can businesses best approach a return to the office and avoid losing employees?
Yeah, that's
that one, Hanif. What we've seen is, again, some innovation. Some of these small businesses, especially in the restaurant industry, that's been particularly hit hard. These small business owners are coming up with ways to retain their employees, and in the restaurant industry is just one example. Those small business owners are considering offering health insurance and paid time off, really augmenting their benefits package to send a message to their employees that you can build a career here, and by offering these additional benefits, they're trying to hold on to their employees.
Yeah, I think, Mark, that's a really good point. And an example, just real quickly, is I was at a restaurant. I've gotten to know this particular restaurant in the neighborhood pretty well, and the manager there was saying that he's been there for, I don't know, 6 years or something in that order, and manages the entire restaurant. And I figured that he had some level of ownership. He's working really late. He was saying comes in really early, leaves the last person out, kind of thing. So I assumed he had some ownership or something like that in the restaurant, or some long-term incentives. And he said, no, actually, I don't. And he says, I'm really considering moving right now and leaving this job after 6 years, and because they aren't even thinking about it. Now, it's easier said than done, of course, right? And there's profitability issues, there's whole sorts of financial issues around this and so forth. But at least I think organizations need to think about that in terms of long-term incentives and say, what is it that we can do? And long-term incentives don't just have to be stock. They could be things like helping students pay off the loans. And, they could be a whole varied set of stuff there that people could start looking at. I think a couple of really quick ones on other ones is, just keeping employees engaged. Communicate. I personally think it's better to over-communicate than under-communicate, right? Just letting people know what's going on, what's happening right now. It doesn't mean that you have to have all the answers. It's as long as they feel the engagement, I believe at least, they feel the engagement, they know that you're thinking about different attributes, it goes a long way. I would say another one might be is reinforcing the company's commitment to safety for employees as well as its customers. I think that's really important. Flexible work arrangement, we talked about that before. One that I personally find more helpful now is I do more frequent check-ins with my employee base as well. So I have regular check-ins more frequently than I used to before, and almost every single employee, just to make sure, and sometimes it's not practical, obviously, but just checking in and making sure that they're coping with the situation goes a really long way. And it's been really well received. I know a lot of managers out there are doing that as well.
Yeah.
So these are just some thoughts, but hopefully, it sheds some light and gives some value.
That's great. Thank you. Well, I do want to end with a couple quick things. Lawrence has chimed back in to help me with the pronunciation from earlier, Mabuhay. So thank you for that, Lawrence. Thank you both, Lawrence and Vanessa, for sticking with us here and helping me with my pronunciation. We also have a hello from Sammy in Dubai. You're near me. I'm in the Middle East as well, just a couple of countries over. So anyway, that is all we have time for today. I'm a little surprised we didn't have a question about whether companies should let you come in with and wear pajamas, but maybe we'll get to that one next time. Thank you so much for joining us, Hanif and Marc.
Our
Thanks,
pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. As always, a big thanks to all of you for tuning in. We'll be back with Marc and Hanif again next week to discuss the shift to a hybrid workforce, what that looks like, how to manage it, and how to manage and measure success. That is happening Tuesday, August 17th at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. We will see you hopefully again from all over the world. Sorry we couldn't shout out everybody. Our producer just could not keep up with all the shout outs. But we hope you'll be back next week, and we'll try our best to get to everybody. And we will see you next week, August 17th at 11:30 a.m.